Welcome to the Roaming Spirits channel, where horror, mystery, and adventure collide. Together, we will dive into the unknown, exploring the haunted corners of imagination and bringing you tales that will leave you breathless. From ghostly encounters to terrifying creatures lurking in the mist, every story is crafted to send a shiver down your spine. Join us as we roam the shadowy paths of fear and wonder. New dark and twisted journeys are always lurking, just beyond the mist. Don't forget to like, share, and comment where you are listening from. Now get comfortable and get ready for the most bone-chilling stories. They told me I was a danger to myself. Said I'd been found wandering the tundra near Churchill with no shoes, mumbling about voices under the ice. Said I hadn't eaten in days. That I attacked the ranger who found me. Thing is, I don't remember any of that. The first thing I do remember is the walls. Padded white, ceiling dripping condensation, and a single black smudge above the light where someone must have stood for hours, staring. They said it was temporary. Evaluation. Wapusk psychiatric. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I knew the name. My grandfather used to call it the place they send broken dogs. 3 stories above ground, 2 below. The parts the staff never talked about. They kept me in room 3B. Alone. No visitors, no clocks. Just medication that made everything fuzzy around the edges. Every night, the lights would buzz, and every night I'd hear scratching from the vents. Not rats. Too deliberate, like fingernails. On the 7th night, I was woken by a whisper. Not a voice, just air moving wrong. The lights flickered and then died completely. In the dark, I saw my door slowly open on its own. No footsteps. Just silence, then a whisper in the hallway. Down. Below. Room 6. I should have stayed in bed. Should have pushed the panic button. Something in me wanted to listen. Maybe it was the drugs. Maybe not. I stepped out barefoot, hallway cold underfoot, and followed the whispers. They led me past empty nurses' stations, rusted wheelchairs with straps dangling, into a back stairwell where the temperature dropped fast. Frost clung to the concrete. Lights cracked overhead, sparking one by one as I descended. There was no 6th floor, not officially. The stairwell should have ended at sub-level 2. But the stairs kept going, deeper, until the numbers on the walls switched from paint to blood, literally smeared in human handprints. When I reached the bottom, I found a single metal door. No handle. Just 6 tally marks scratched into it, and a window the size of a playing card. Inside, pure black. I shouldn't have looked, but I leaned in. That's when I saw me. Not my reflection. Me. Standing in the black, skin pale, eyes gone completely white. The copy didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. Then its mouth opened, too wide, unhinged, and whispered, "You're already inside." The door flew open with a slam and something yanked me in. I woke back in my room, or I thought I did. Except this time the walls weren't padded. They were wet, pulsing, like muscle. Veins throbbed where cracks used to be, and the windows showed nothing but snow falling sideways, slow motion. Like time had stopped. The staff were different now, all of them too tall, necks that turned a little too far, smiles that never blinked. They called me by the wrong name, Dr. Halloran, and asked why I wasn't attending my patients. The other inmates? Gone, replaced by people in straitjackets whose mouths had been sewn shut. They screamed with their eyes. I tried to escape. The elevators just led back to my room. No doors opened unless someone whispered to them. And always, I could hear the scratching in the vents. It's been weeks, maybe months. I've stopped trying to mark the days, but I know the thing in room 6 is still watching me. Every night at 3:12 a.m., my lights go out. Every night it whispers my name from the vents. I'm not sure if I ever left that room in the tundra, or if I ever existed outside this place, but I found a mirror yesterday behind a loose tile, and the face looking back, it wasn't mine. I used to look like someone else. Not on the outside, but inside. I used to smile without thinking. I used to sleep without medication. But now I can't even trust the mirror. It all started the night I moved into my uncle's farmhouse. After he passed, I inherited the place, an old 2-story home nestled in the dead woods of Vermont. I didn't even remember him much, just that he never came to family gatherings and always smelled like ash when he did. My parents begged me to sell the house, but after my divorce, I needed the quiet, or at least I thought I did. The first night was normal, just creaky wood and the sigh of wind pressing through unsealed windows. But on the second night, I heard footsteps upstairs. I was alone. They were light, barefoot, moving slowly. I told myself it was the house settling. Old pipes, squirrels, anything. But then something started moving things. The lamp in the hallway turned itself facing the wall. My toothbrush kept appearing on the floor, and every time I opened the fridge, the butter knife I left in the sink was gone, only to reappear in my bedroom drawer. I started writing notes to myself, just to prove I wasn't losing my mind. But by morning, the notes would be changed. My handwriting, but not my words. He's learning your thoughts. Don't look him in the face. That's when the mirror started acting up. At first, it was subtle. My reflection blinked a second after I did. Then I saw it smile. When I wasn't, I covered every mirror in the house. But one night I forgot the medicine cabinet, and I saw him. Same face, same eyes, but wrong. Too wide, too alive. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. I leaned closer and he whispered, "Give me your skin." I punched the mirror, spent the night bleeding in the bathtub, heart racing like a trapped animal. In the morning, the shards were gone, all of them, but I could hear them, still clinking in the walls like teeth chattering. I tried to leave. Car wouldn't start, phone wouldn't turn on, and the basement door was open, even though I'd locked it with a key. I went down with a flashlight. The air down there was wet like lungs after drowning, and on the far wall, scratches, thousands of them, all forming words. You aren't you. You never were. Let me be you. Then the lights went out. I heard the stairs creak behind me, felt breath on the back of my neck, and a voice, my voice, whispered, "It's better this way." I don't know how I got out. I woke up 2 days later in the guest room, floors above the basement. But everything was changed. The walls were wrong. The photos on the shelf showed a man with my face, but not my eyes. He was smiling too hard. He was in every picture, every room, even in the mirror, now uncovered. Now I sleep with the lights on. I don't look in the mirror for too long, and every morning I check my face, just in case. But I can feel him, behind my smile, under my skin, waiting. Sometimes I swear I see a face in the glass, just behind mine, whispering, "Soon." I know I shouldn't have taken the bone, but it was just lying there, right in the clearing, half buried in moss, smooth and white as polished ivory. It didn't look human. Too long, too narrow. Maybe a deer, or so I told myself. It was my third solo camping trip that year, early October, right as the birch trees start turning ghost pale under a gray sky. I was near the Hiawatha National Forest, miles from anyone, in a place the old Ojibwe maps only marked with a symbol, a wide eye carved into the middle of a tree. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just looking for isolation. What I found was something older and something hungry. The first night I felt watched. You always feel that a little when you camp alone, but this was different. It was intentional, like whatever was watching knew me. I kept waking up to the sound of trees creaking, but there was no wind, no movement, just that groaning wood sound like something leaning in too close. I should have packed up. I should have left. But I stayed. The second morning I found the footprints. Huge, not boots. Bare. 5 toes, long but wide. And they started in the middle of camp, like something just appeared there. They circled the fire, walked to my tent, then stopped right next to where I'd slept. I followed them about 50 feet, and that's when I saw the birch tree, dead center in a clearing, stark white bark, and on its trunk an eye, carved deep, centuries old, filled with black resin. Right beneath it was a pile of bones, small ones, broken, picked clean. I reached down and pulled one free, just to look. It was warm to the touch. That night the dream started. I saw my own face, but it wasn't mine. The eyes were pitch black. The mouth hung open too wide, like the jaw had been unhinged. It whispered in a tongue I didn't know. When I woke up, my sleeping bag was open, and there were wet footprints on the nylon, like someone had climbed inside while I slept. I tried to leave that morning. Compass wouldn't work. GPS kept spinning. And when I backtracked down the trail, I ended up right back at the eye tree. But it was different now. The carving was bleeding. Thick black sap oozed from the center of the eye like tears. And next to the tree, my backpack, even though I'd left it hanging 200 yards away at camp. Inside was the bone, and my journal, rewritten. Every page said the same thing. It sees you now. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the fire high and sat with my back against a tree, knife in hand. Around 2 a.m., I heard it breathing again, then laughing, high, feminine, but wrong. And that's when I saw her, half in shadow, half woman, half ash. Her arms were too long, her skin cracked like bark, and her face, it looked like my mother, but rotted, empty, like something wearing her face as a mask. She whispered, "Give it back." I threw the bone into the fire. The flames died instantly, and in the darkness, a dozen eyes opened in the trees around me, all watching, all blinking in unison. Then, silence. No footsteps, no wind, just silence so deep it crushed my ears. When I was found 2 days later, I was 15 miles from where I started, clothes shredded, no shoes, mumbling about eyes in the trees. They said I was hypothermic, delusional, but I still have the bone. I found it again in my duffel after I got home, wrapped in birch bark with a symbol carved into it, the eye. Sometimes I wake up to the sound of creaking trees outside my window. Even though I live in the middle of the city, sometimes I see her face in the glass, and every time I blink, it gets closer. I used to think possession was just a metaphor. You know, he wasn't himself. Something came over her. That sort of thing. But now I know better. I know it's real, and I know it started with me. It began last September. I'd been spiraling after a rough breakup and a death in the family. My little brother Liam passed suddenly from a brain aneurysm at 27. We were close, too close. I felt like part of me had been amputated. I was drinking too much. sleeping too little. So when my old friend Caleb called and said he'd found a cheap, off-grid farmhouse out in North Dakota for us to get away from the world, I said yes without hesitation. I didn't ask why the place was so cheap. Didn't ask why it had 2 crosses nailed to every door frame. We got there just after dusk. The place had been abandoned for years. No electricity, no heat, just the dry, creaking breath of wind through the cracked boards. Caleb had brought candles and wood for the stove, and I figured we'd just drink, talk, and maybe finally feel human again. But on the second night, I found the door. It was hidden behind a set of rotted cabinets in the root cellar, old wood, nailed shut with rusted horseshoes. There were words scratched into the door, so old I could barely make them out. Something in Latin. Caleb joked that we'd found the devil's pantry, but I felt cold just standing near it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing knocking, first from beneath the floorboards, then behind the walls. It wasn't animals. I've lived rural. I know the sounds of raccoons and wind. This was knuckles, flesh and bone. The next morning, Caleb was different. He was pale, quiet, kept looking behind him like someone was there. I had a dream, he said. Someone was whispering in my ear, asking to be let in. I asked what the voice sounded like. He didn't answer. By night 4, I was ready to leave. But we were snowed in, hard. The wind howled like something alive, and the only warmth came from the old iron stove, where we huddled in the kitchen with our blankets and whiskey. Then Caleb started talking to someone who wasn't there, muttering to the air, giggling like a child, whispering, "Yes, yes, I see you now. You're not so scary." I asked who he was talking to. He said, "My new brother. He says you're jealous." I tried to leave the next morning on foot, hiked for 2 hours through snow that reached my knees. But I swear to God I kept ending up right back at the house, no matter what direction I walked. That night, Caleb stood at the cellar door, holding a hammer. "I think we should let him out," he said. "He's cold. He's been waiting so long." I tried to stop him. We fought. He screamed in a voice that didn't sound like his own. It was deeper, hungrier. When I knocked him down, he laughed. But it wasn't Caleb's laugh. It was my brother's. I locked myself in the upstairs bedroom. But around midnight, the door began to shake. Not from Caleb. He never came up. Something else was out there, breathing, and whispering my name like it knew every secret I never told. Things I thought only I remembered. How I let Liam drive drunk that night. How I told him to walk it off. How I never said sorry. In the morning, Caleb was gone. Just gone. No footprints. No coat missing. No note. Just the cellar door, open. I didn't stay. I ran. When I finally reached a road, I flagged down a snowplow driver. I told the cops what I could. Caleb went missing. The storm trapped us. The house was old and weird. They searched for days. Never found him. They asked if I'd been drinking. I said yes. They asked if we'd been on anything else. I lied. But here's what I didn't tell them. I didn't tell them that the thing followed me. Because now, sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see a second version of myself, standing in the corner of my bedroom, smiling. He whispers to me sometimes, tells me we're going to be whole again. That Caleb isn't dead. He's part of us now. I thought possession was something violent, foaming mouths, twisting bodies, exorcists with holy water. But it's quieter than that, more patient. It waits in grief, waits in guilt, and then it whispers, "Let me in." And if you answer, even once, you're already gone. I was never a superstitious man. I grew up on stories, sure, My grandfather used to tell us tales of soldiers who still roamed the woods where muskets once roared, but I always figured they were just to scare kids into behaving around the fire. Until last winter, when I saw the man in red on the ridge. It happened on a solo winter camping trip near the US-Canada border, along a quiet stretch of land that runs just west of the St. Lawrence River. I'd hiked in from the American side, deep into no man's land where the trees are older than any map and the snow lies thick and untouched for months. I was about 3 days into the trip, camped on a ridge overlooking the frozen river. The cold was brutal that night. My breath hung in the air like fog, and the wind sang through the black spruce like a dying hymn. I had a small fire going, some coffee in a tin, and just the muffled silence of the woods around me. That's when I heard footsteps, not crunching snow like a hiker or deer. These were measured, deliberate, boots, heavy and paced. I turned, scanning the trees with my flashlight. Nothing. Just white and shadow, the kind of quiet that feels pregnant, like something's holding its breath, waiting. I went back to the fire, telling myself it was nothing. But then, I saw the smoke, not from my fire. This was across the ridge, maybe 50 yards out, just beyond the tree line. A faint wisp rising, curling black against the pale sky. Someone else was out here. Maybe another camper. I bundled up, grabbed my flashlight and knife, and followed the trail uphill. But when I got there was no fire, just snow. Pristine. No tracks, no heat, just a circle of melted earth where something had clearly burned, not long ago. And on the edge of that circle, a musket ball, half buried in ash. It didn't look like a souvenir. It looked fresh, as if it had just been fired and dropped. I took it, turned around, and saw the first glimpse of him. A tall man, maybe 6 feet, standing at the tree line downhill. Still, straight, clad in red and black with a long, stiff coat and a wide-brimmed hat. At first, I thought it was a reenactor, some War of 1812 hobbyist who had wandered too far. But then he turned. And I swear to God, his face was wrong. Not monstrous, just out of time, gaunt and pale like it had never felt sun. Eyes black as pitch, no expression, just staring straight at me. I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" No answer. He didn't move. I blinked. He was gone. Not walked away, just vanished. No sound, no trace, no footsteps in the snow. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept the fire high and my knife closer. Every few hours I'd hear the crunch of those boots circling the camp. Once I saw him standing between 2 trees, coat billowing like smoke. When dawn finally came, I found something that made my blood freeze. Next to my tent, perfectly pressed into the snow, were boot prints. Old-fashioned, narrow, straight-laced, marching boots. But here's the thing. They didn't approach from the woods. They started behind my tent, as if someone had walked out of thin air. I packed up immediately, hiked 3 hours straight until I got back to my truck. I didn't talk about it until I ran into a local historian months later at a museum near Prescott, Ontario. He was giving a talk on the Battle of Ogdensburg, one of the bloodiest border skirmishes of the war. I mentioned my trip, the ridge, the soldier. His face went pale. He told me the area I'd camped on was an old staging point. A British Redcoat battalion had camped there in February 1813, waiting to cross the ice and ambush the American forces at dawn. Something went wrong. The records say a group of them got separated, lost in a sudden blizzard. Only a few returned. The rest vanished into the woods. No bodies, no graves, just muskets found in spring, some still loaded. One was discovered beside a burned-out fire ring, almost exactly where I stood. Before I left, the historian told me one more thing. Locals still talk about the walker on the ridge, a man in red who appears on the coldest nights, not malevolent, but trapped, caught in a loop, reliving the last orders he ever followed. And if you see him, don't follow, don't speak, just back away. I didn't realize how badly I needed the cabin until I got there. My friend Mark had offered it to me for the week, a quiet place up north near Chapleau, buried in snow and surrounded by nothing but frozen pines and dead silence. After the year I'd had, burnout, a bad breakup, and losing my job, I needed the stillness. It was a 2-room log cabin, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, an old wood stove, and an outhouse about 30 steps out the back. No internet, barely any cell signal. Just me, a couple books, my thermos of coffee, and enough wood to last a week. The first night was quiet, peaceful even. The second night changed everything. It started with a knock, not on the door, but on the window. I was brushing my teeth in the kitchen around midnight when I heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap on the window behind me. I froze. The nearest neighbor was 5 kilometers away. No one knew I was up here except Mark, and he was in Vancouver. I turned around slowly. Nothing. Just darkness beyond the frosted glass. The trees outside barely visible under the pale moonlight. I tried to shake it off. Animals, maybe. Tree branch. I was jumpy, that's all. But the next morning, things felt off. I'd left my boots by the door, wet and dirty from chopping wood the day before. But when I woke up, they were bone dry and clean, like someone had wiped them down and set them just so. Then I found the mirror. In the bathroom, a tiny one with a cracked medicine cabinet, I noticed something strange. When I looked into the mirror, my reflection hesitated. It was subtle, but real. I tilted my head to the left. It followed, but just a half-second too late, like it had to remember what to do. My smile felt returned, not mirrored. I didn't brush it off. There's something about solitude that sharpens your senses. You can feel when something isn't quite right. That night, it escalated. I was lying in bed around 2 a.m. when I heard footsteps on the porch. Deliberate, slow, crunching snow. I sat bolt upright, holding my breath. The door didn't open. But then, I heard the key. My key, turning in the lock. Only I'd left it inside, hanging on the hook by the door. I grabbed the axe I'd brought in from the woodshed and crept toward the front room. I could see the knob turning. Once, twice, then it stopped. I held my breath, waiting for the sound of retreating steps. Instead, I heard breathing, right on the other side of the door. Heavy, familiar, exactly like mine. I flung the door open, axe raised. No one there, no tracks, just untouched snow. But that's when I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. On the hook where I'd left my key, there were 2 copies. One looked exactly like mine. The other was identical, but a little older, a little scratched, the grooves slightly deeper, as if used longer, worn, like I'd had it for years. The next day, I made a plan to leave. I packed up before dusk and started the old snowmobile. But as I was tying my bag down, I glanced back at the cabin and saw myself watching from the window. Not a reflection, a second me, standing inside, staring, expressionless, eyes too wide, shoulders perfectly still. My own face, but hollowed out. It didn't flinch when I looked at it. It didn't blink. I raced back inside with the axe, but the cabin was empty. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just a mirror in the bathroom, fogged with a single handprint. From the inside. That night I slept with the lights on and the axe in bed with me. But I still woke up to the sound of the kettle boiling. Only I hadn't put it on. crept into the kitchen and saw a cup already poured, steam rising, the smell of coffee, black just the way I like it. And beside it on the table was my journal, open to a page I hadn't written. It said, "You left, but I stayed. You forgot me, but I remember you. You are mine now." And it was signed with my own name, exactly how I sign it, right down to the little line under the Y. I tried to leave that morning, loaded the snowmobile, but when I pulled the starter cord, it wouldn't budge. The gas line had been sliced, and my footprints, they were gone, as if I'd never arrived. The forest is too quiet now. The shadows lean toward me. The mirror doesn't just reflect anymore. It watches. And worst of all, I saw him again this morning. Me, standing at the tree line, watching the cabin, smiling. And I realized something I can't shake. I'm not going to make it out. Because whatever that is, it's not trying to kill me. It's trying to replace me. And it's almost did. I never believed in ghosts. Not until I met the one that lived in my bedroom. It started after I moved back in with my mom. I was 28, broke, and fresh out of a bad relationship. I needed a place to crash while I sorted my life out, and the only room available was my childhood bedroom. I hadn't slept there in over a decade. It still had the faded wallpaper and that weird yellow closet door that never closed properly. I moved in during December. Cold, dark, and quiet, especially at night. The kind of quiet that feels wrong, like the house is holding something in. The first thing I noticed was the corner. The far left corner of my bedroom, right between the window and the dresser. I couldn't explain it, but that spot just felt off. Like the shadows were thicker there, deeper. I'd catch myself staring at it without meaning to. At first, I thought it was my anxiety acting up. That room held a lot of weird memories. Fights with my dad, sleepless nights, even a few sleep paralysis episodes when I was younger. I chalked it up to stress. But then the knocking started. 3 soft knocks, always around 3:10 a.m. At first, I thought it was the old pipes or house settling, but it was too regular, too precise. 3 every night, same rhythm, same time. Then it moved closer. One night, I woke up to the knock right next to my bed, on the wall, so close I felt the vibration on the mattress. I turned on the lamp. Nothing there. Just that damn corner, darker than the rest of the room, even with the light on. I started sleeping with the hallway light on. Door cracked. Childish, maybe. But something about full darkness felt inviting. Like I was opening the door for something. That's when I saw her. It was just after 2:45 a.m., 2 weeks into the haunting. I hadn't even fallen asleep yet. I was lying on my side, watching the glow from the hallway, when I noticed the corner was darker than usual. No, not darker. Occupied. There was a shape there, a figure. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but it had weight, a form. A woman, tall, thin, with her back to me. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, just enough that I could see the glint of one wide eye, barely visible behind stringy black hair. She wasn't moving, but she was vibrating, like a bad signal on an old TV. And she was facing the wall, staring into it. I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched, frozen, heart punching my ribs. Then she turned around, slow, creaking like bone on bone, and vanished as soon as her face came into full view. But in that flash, I saw her eyes. They were mine, exactly like mine. The same shade of brown, same shape, but lifeless, like she had drowned. That night, I barely slept. Next morning, I told my mom. She went pale. "You saw her too." That hit me like a truck. Apparently, she'd seen the woman once, years ago, after my dad left. She'd woken up to a shape sitting at the edge of the bed. When she turned on the lamp, there was a puddle of lake water on the floor, but no one there. We lived nowhere near a lake. I did some digging. The house was built in the early 1960s. Normal stuff. Nothing in the news. But an old neighbor said something weird. Apparently, the original owner's daughter drowned at a cottage up north, somewhere near Manitoulin. She'd been sleepwalking, walked straight into the freezing water one night. They brought her body back here for the funeral. And she'd slept in my room, in the exact same corner I kept seeing her in. I wanted to leave, desperately, but I couldn't afford to. So I started setting up a camera. Just my phone on a tripod, recording all night. Every morning I'd check the footage. Nothing. For 6 nights. On the 7th, I nearly threw up. Around 3:10 a.m., just as the knocks echoed on the mic, I saw the blanket behind me shift. Not like wind or me rolling. It pulled, like a hand had grabbed it and tugged toward the corner. Then, slowly, I saw a shape rise from behind the dresser. The same figure, same jerky motion. But this time she crawled, hands and knees, toward me. She stopped right at the edge of the bed. And then, she mouthed something. No sound, just lips moving. I zoomed in, enhanced the clip. One word. Home. That was last week. Since then, she hasn't stopped coming. She stands in the corner every night now. Sometimes I wake up with water dripping from my pillow. Sometimes I hear my own voice whispering from the closet. Last night, I saw her face in the mirror behind mine. She's not just haunting the room. She's becoming part of me. I feel her in my thoughts, my memories. She's bleeding through. And I think she wants me to join her. I should have turned back the moment the wind changed. When you grow up in the bush, you learn to trust the little signs, the stillness before a storm, the birds going quiet. That afternoon on Wolf Ridge, I felt it deep in my chest before I even saw anything. Joel and I were doing a 4-day backwoods loop near Lake Missinaibi. It was late October. Gold leaves, cold nights, not a soul around. Day 3 had us climbing Wolf Ridge, an old trapper trail mostly forgotten by now. We weren't locals, just 2 guys chasing one last adventure before winter locked the north down. Twilight was settling in. We had set up camp near an old fire ring wedged between 2 moss-covered boulders. The trees up there, mostly jack pine and birch, grow twisted and hunched like they're clawing through the rock just to breathe. The fire was crackling, and the sky had turned a deep orange behind the tree line. That's when Joel said, "Do you see that?" Across the ridge, maybe 200 yards off, a soft yellow light flickered through the trees, like a lantern swaying. I figured it might be another hiker. Joel shook his head. No other cars at the trailhead. We've been alone out here. We watched it drift. Not like someone walking, though. It floated. Too smooth. It rose up behind a tree, higher than it should have, like it climbed effortlessly. I didn't say it, but I thought of Waskahikan, spirit lights. My grandfather told me stories when I was little. Lights seen deep in the woods, usually where something violent had happened. Joel tried filming it with his phone. The second he raised it, the light vanished. Then we heard it. A low hum. A woman's voice, soft and wordless. We didn't speak for a minute, just stared into the dark. Joel whispered, "That's not wind." It wasn't coming from one place. It was like the whole forest was whispering. That night we didn't sleep. We took turns sitting by the fire. Neither of us said it aloud, but we knew something was watching us. At some point after midnight, I dozed off in my chair. I woke to Joel shaking me. "Dude, someone's in the tent." I froze. "What?" I heard breathing, slow, heavy. I opened the flap. No one there. We searched everything. Nothing. But the ground, footprints, not ours. Barefoot. Wrong. The toes were too long. The heels too narrow. They didn't even leave real prints. Just pressed the leaves lightly, like it barely touched the ground. Then the humming started again. Closer. And the light returned. 20 feet from the trees. Floating. Pulsing. "Let's go," Joel hissed. We grabbed what we could and ran, headlamps bobbing, breath ragged. But the forest wasn't the same. The path twisted in ways it hadn't before. Landmarks vanished, and behind us that light, drifting through the trees, always just out of reach, like it was hurting us. Eventually we stopped. We were back. The fire ring, the twisted pines, full circle. But our tent was torn, collapsed and ripped like something clawed through it. Inside, bones, dozens of small ones, clean, arranged in a spiral pointing inward. In the center, a single blackened feather. "This is a trap," Joel whispered. Then everything went silent, even the wind, and a voice spoke from the trees. A woman's voice, clear now, not humming. "You came to the high place. You breathed where they drowned. You saw the fire that does not burn." Joel screamed and bolted. I followed. We ran until we found the collapsed trapper's cabin. We crawled inside and stayed until dawn. No fire, no talking, just waiting. We heard footsteps outside, voices whispering in some language I didn't know. By morning, everything was still. We left without a word. When we got back to the truck, scratched into the dust on my windshield was a single word: stay. I won't go past mile marker 19 anymore, and when the birds go quiet or the wind shifts, I listen. Because sometimes the woods still hum, and when they do, you don't want to be caught breathing. I've camped my whole life. I grew up on the edge of Lake Superior, Batchewana side, so being out in the bush with nothing but a tent and a fire has always felt like home. But what happened last September on that ridge above the Goulet River, that changed everything. There were 3 of us, me, my cousin Ray, and his buddy Marcus, who was visiting from the city. They wanted one last big trip before the frost came in, and I knew the perfect spot, deep in Crown Land, way off any trail, just a few hours from this abandoned ranger tower. Nobody goes up there anymore. We parked, hiked in, and set up camp near a clearing by the ridge. You could see the valley drop below and hear the river if the wind was right. No cell service, no lights, just wind, water, and silence thick enough to choke you. The first day was perfect. Cut wood, cooked meat, drank cheap beer. But that first night, something felt off. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like heavy breathing right outside the tent. I thought maybe a bear had wandered in, so I sat up real slow, grabbed the flare gun from my pack. But then the breathing stopped, and I swear I heard whispering. Not wind, not animals, whispers, fast, overlapping, almost like they were arguing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Next morning, I didn't say anything. I figured it was exhaustion messing with me. But over breakfast, Ray said, "Did you guys hear people talking last night?" I looked up fast. "Where?" "By the tree line," he said. "Sounded like a group. Men, but real low. Like angry." Marcus laughed it off, said it was probably loons or owls or some crap. But Ray and I grew up here. We know what loons sound like, and owls don't speak fluent Cree. We spent the day fishing in a small lake up the trail. Everything felt normal again until sunset. That's when we saw the footprints. They weren't ours. We'd been gone all day, and these prints were fresh, real fresh. The kind that still had sharp edges and hadn't dried out. But they weren't boot prints. They were bare feet, long, toes too spread, and deep. Whatever made them was heavy. And the strangest part? They circled the tent multiple times, then stopped, right where I had slept. I felt sick. We made excuses. Maybe an animal. Maybe someone was screwing with us. We started the fire early, made sure our blades were close. That night, none of us went to bed. We sat around the fire, throwing more wood on than we needed, trying not to admit we were scared. The woods were too quiet, like even the crickets were holding their breath. Then, just past midnight, Marcus looked up and said, "Do you see that?" Across the clearing, maybe 30 feet into the trees, something was standing. Tall. Wrong. It was almost human-shaped, but stretched too far, like it had grown past its limits. Its legs were too long, arms hung low. And its head didn't move naturally. It jerked side to side like it was sniffing us out. Then it stepped forward, and the fire flickered like the air around it twitched. I grabbed the flare and fired. The light lit up the whole clearing, and for a split second we saw its face. It wasn't a face. It was a mask. A deer skull split down the center and bound with what looked like sinew. Black holes where the eyes should be. Smoke poured from the mouth. It vanished into the trees before the flare even hit the ground. We didn't wait. We didn't argue. We packed what we could in 60 seconds, left the tent behind, and sprinted down the ridge trail with only our headlamps and one flashlight that kept dying. We made it to the truck just as the sun started to rise. All three of us climbed in, locked the doors, and didn't say a single word until we hit the highway. We don't talk about it now. Marcus never came back up north. Ray gets twitchy when the wind rustles the trees. As for me, I can't go camping anymore, not deep in the bush. Because some nights, especially when it's cold and still, I hear it again. The breathing, and those whispers, still speaking Cree, just outside my window.